episode of Beyond the Bottom Line. I'm your host, Burt Miller. Well, today I'm excited. The guest that we're bringing on has had such an incredible positive impact on many people's lives. And my guest is Dr. Jean Carruthers, who was the one to discover that Botox would be used as a cosmetic benefit to people. So maybe many of you out there have enjoyed the benefit of what she discovered back about, how long ago was it, Dr. Jean?
Well, this was way back in the early 80s.
Wow, early 80s. So anyhow, Dr. Jean Carruthers, welcome to the show. She's coming to us from Canada at her Whistler home in the great Northwest. And again, welcome to the show, Dr. Carruthers.
Thank you so much, Bert. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, no, we're glad to have you. Today, we're going to talk about how she has affected change in what she has done, and not only affected change, but she continues to drive change here in 2021 and some of the changing trends that she sees. And so we'll dig into that as well, along with looking at the office for the future as it relates to doctors' offices, et cetera. So let's just dive right on in. Your story is such an interesting one. You know, over 30 years ago, if you think about it, you had this incredible aha moment, which I want to hear about. I want to understand the moment you said, I may have something here, treating patients for eye spasms that led to a cosmetic, I should say, benefit to Botox. Can you share that with us?
Oh, sure. It was really because I was treating blepharospasm. These poor people can't open their eyes, so they can't cross the street, drive a car, earn a living. And what you can do with, in those days, the only neuromodulator we were using was Botox. You can inject the Botox strategically in the eye muscles, and you can open their eyes. They can be normal. They could drive a bus, but they certainly can lead independent lives. So it was one of those patients, and she got angry at me. And she said, "You didn't treat me here." And I apologized to her and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't think you were spasming there." And she said, "Oh, I know I'm not spasming there. But every time you treat me there, I get this beautiful, untroubled expression." Well, that might have been a remark that would fly by somebody else, but it didn't, because my husband, Alistair, it was a cosmetic dermatologist, and he had been expressing to me how difficult it was to treat these deep grooves between the eyes with the then available products, collagen, fibril, and fat, because all those things were either painful or dangerous, or they didn't actually work if the person frowned, because they didn't do anything to the muscle, only to the skin. So I went home and said, I think that we could use my botulinum toxin on your wrinkle patients, and let's do a study. So we both are very published. We're both scientists. We both have reasonable reputations in the scientific world. And so the idea of doing a study came naturally to us. It took us a long time. It took us from 1987 to get 18 patients. Now, many doctors will see that in a morning nowadays. That's how far it's come. Because in those days, it was very difficult to explain to people that this was going to be a really good treatment for your frown lines. And that's when I learned that people don't do what you tell them to. People do what you do. So I got Alistair to treat me. And that's how I was able to get all these patients into the study, which was, it was regarded as absolute craziness by everybody, all our colleagues for sure, all our friends, yep. And the public at large thought this would go nowhere.
You know what? I'm living bold because I do have a face for radio, Dr. Carruthers, and I could probably use some of your help on some of those frown lines. It's amazing. So think about it. You are able to work with your husband to create this treatment and such the impact on so many lives. And today, talk a little bit about the journey now and where the use of Botox is today, actually for millions of people. And I just find it fascinating that you discovered this, and now it is a treatment for so many people.
Yeah, the journey started with giving the publication, the paper at the American Society for Dermatologic Surgery. And there was dead silence in the room. And
I bet.
afterwards, some very notable experts and people I highly respect came up to me and said, "That's a crazy idea. It's going to go nowhere." I mean, it was a dud. But when you know something works, and it's safe, because I'd been using it on all these blepharospasm patients that I'd been treating. I knew what I was doing, and all we had to do was to get it into the scientific literature and really go with it. That's what we did. So we taught all around the world, and we published, and we did tons of research. That's how we really gave the statue of Botox its pedestal, because of the really solid science that went behind it. And so also we're not afraid of talking. And, that's when we started teaching other people how to do this. And then they started doing research. And then that's the snowball, it starts rolling. And it started really a whole new world of collaboration and cooperation between different specialties worldwide who never would have spoken to each other before. But for example, because the urologists had seen that the cosmetic world was so safe, now they thought, well, we could try this on overactive bladder. There's all kinds of new uses for this amazing, I think it's the most amazing molecule in the world.
It's funny. I mean, look, obviously you're a pioneer. And the thing that I just wrote down that you said is you brought people together that crossed over and brought so many other treatments to patients around the world. And that to me, that's fascinating. I got to tell you, when I sat down, I don't really talk to my wife too often about when I'm bringing people on the show, but I knew she would have a vested interest. So I told her a little bit about you, and she was so excited you're going to be on the show. So I'm looking forward to her seeing it because I think, well, no, I think people, there's other people like her, of course, and the fact that what you've created has treated so many people is really important. Can you, you talked a little bit, I want you to go a little deeper if you don't mind. You talked a little bit about the challenges when you introduced this and the room went quiet, but can you get specific as some of the other challenges and uphill battles you faced in terms of bringing this more mainstream?
Yeah, I think it was because there was an article published in 1969 by Fred Lamanna calling Botox the most poisonous poison. So when you give a chemical a terrible reputation like that, you can see that normal physicians who are conservative and care about their patients think, how frivolous to use the most poisonous poison on something like a wrinkle. Who cares about a wrinkle? You might be hurting my patients. That's why we had to go with the science, because otherwise they would not have understood it. So that was a major challenge. But fortunately, the dermatology and dermatologic surgery community are very open-minded. And when they see data that really is convincing, they believe it and they go with it. There were many other specialties that were much more, shall we say, standoffish and waited quite a long time before they started using it in their practices. But the main challenge was to get the publications out there and do the research. Then it was a question of educating the public. And that's something that only happens over time with lots of interviews like this. And lots of, we did a lot of that as well.
So speaking to that and making it more mainstream, Dr. Carruthers, talk to me initially about the mainstream media and how it was accepted. Certainly you had the data to support the treatment, which is outstanding, and that's why we are here where we are today. But early on, and that's what pioneers are all about, they fight resistance. Talk to me a bit about the mainstream media when this was first introduced.
Well, the incredulity. That's probably, I can show you all kinds, sort of the National Enquirer, that sort of,
Right.
that sort of take on it. then I was very grateful to be invited to meet ABC News by Dr. Pat Wexler. And a crew came out to us, to Alistair and me in Vancouver, and from ABC, and they did a piece on us. I think that was one of the big turning points, that it was accepted by a media group as illustrious as them. Then, of course, there are many interviews, and people just gradually started to believe. I think it still took a long time, though, before it takes about 30 years for something to really catch on. So we're in the sort of second 30 years now where everyone's like, eh. The young people coming up nowadays, it's always been there. They have no idea how it started. Last year, and I think Allergan, the company that manufactures and sells Botox, and all the other companies, neuromodulator companies, have to take an enormous amount of credit too, because they've done an awful lot of advertising, direct-to-consumer advertising. But also, I think that they have treated all of them have treated their investigators very well. Last December, Allergan invited Alistair and me to come to the New York Stock Exchange and be on the floor of the stock exchange celebrating 30 years of cosmetic Botox, or 30 years of Botox anyway. So that was a really exciting thing. No, I think that it's just a gradual thing. It's almost organic. It's not that one person says, you must do this. It takes people time. They'll learn about it. They'll study it. They'll come back to it. They may not want to go and have it done themselves just yet. I've had people take 6-7 years to make a decision. Some people make a decision right now, but I think they're probably in the minority.
Yeah, you have so many young people now considering it, and the educational process that has gone on is quite amazing. Before I move on to where you are today and some of the trends you're seeing and how you're impacting some of those trends, any lessons that you want to share as related to throughout the process that were of note for you?
Yes, I think if you believe that something is correct, if you think that it is an honest result that is reproducible and predictable, then you have to go and prove it. And in the court of public opinion, science is the way we in medicine prove things. I think it's actually something that you also need a friend. It's very hard to be one person doing these things. And that was the strength that Alistair and I brought. If you think of an idea as like a basketball, and I, with my training as an ophthalmologist, and Alistair with his training as a dermatologist, we each see the same basketball, but we see it from slightly different perspectives. So I think that is what gives you the third dimension. That's what gives you a reason to explore different things, because opportunities open up that when two people discuss with slightly different backgrounds, discuss them, more opportunities. So we started with the glabella. Then we moved on to crow's feet. Then we moved on to raising eyebrows with Botox. Then we moved to facial shaping with Botox. Then we moved down the neck to the platysma and shaping the jawline. I mean, there's an awful lot of facial shaping that can come out of the tip of a needle that doesn't need to have surgery. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from now, because they have so many responsibilities. If you look at Generation X and Y are working and they're educating their kids at home from time to time, they have no time for surgery and downtime. This is perfect for that generation. And I mean, I take my hat off to them, because we never had to educate our kids on weekdays. You know, our generation was spoiled in our pre-pandemic parenting.
Wow, what a great soundbite. I didn't come on the show. Now, I'm from Indiana originally, Dr. Carruthers. I didn't come on the show expecting to get a hoops analogy from you, but I love it. So thanks for bringing that. I love it. But I also like the lesson you provided myself and all the listeners. Uh, Believe in something, prove it, make sure it's correct and honest. If it's repeatable, predictable, and then be sure you're not alone and have an advocate along the way and make it happen. I love that lesson. So thank you for that. Okay, let's go forward. 2021 and what you're doing. Have you noticed in what's going on today, and you've kind of alluded to it earlier about the broader mainstream of folks that are in different uses for Botox, but even Botox and beyond, the budgets that people are putting together for self-care, particularly once 2020 hit, what have you noticed about that?
Yeah, the people can't travel. People now are suddenly finding that they have some money that they can spend. And people are also realizing that where the face was always our calling card, it's become even more so nowadays that working from home is such a new trend because you wear a mask all the time. So it's your upper face, which you share with others out there. But at work and Zoom with your friends and colleagues, you actually have the beautiful facility to see your entire face. And now you have some cash in the bank and you can do something about it. And that's where I think that there's been a tremendous shift, that people are starting to realize this is a really important facet, because this is how I connect with the world now. It's not just I go to a meeting and you can give people a hug. You have to be able to express your positivity and your genius and your humor and your humanity all through your face on a screen. It's a tall order. And if you've got ginormous frown lines and your skin is all blotchy and saggy, this is not the message that you want to give to other people. So I think people are starting to realize that science has created this enormous benefit of a science-derived beauty. So yes, they can safely go ahead and have neuromodulators, fillers, energy-based devices. But I think what's really starting to turn the crank is the science, because Generation X and Y are so data-driven. They just don't believe marketing. They want to see the numbers. And they will believe the numbers and follow a trend that is predicted by the numbers. So that leads you to two other things. What are they doing? And what they're realizing is that there's a concept called prejuvenation. Prejuvenation means treating something before it goes sideways, if you see what I'm saying. Before the skin ages, prevented aging, because the rejuvenating potential in, say, non-sun damaged skin is way greater than in sun damaged skin. So that's where I just did a study showing this. It's about to be published in the Aesthetic Surgery Journal. I'm very excited about it, where I used a science-driven cream on one arm and just a regular moisturizer on the other. And on the science-driven cream arm, on the non-sun exposed side, more than the sun exposed side, there was tremendous new collagen, new elastin, new thickness, new smoothness. It was brand new skin, but more so on the non-sun damaged side. So that leads us, for Generation X and Y, we need to start treating our kids with sunscreen early, and not just on a sunny day. There's only 10% less UV out there on a cloudy day than a sunny day. It's every day. The kids should be wearing sunscreen. That's just a start. I think the other thing that Generation X and Y are really getting is maintenance. It's not good enough to do something once. You have to be consistent and you have to be dedicated to the concept that if you do these small things every single day, then you are going to have a face that is the best calling card you can have when you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 or 100. My oldest patient's in her 90s.
Wow. You know, that's fascinating. And what you talked about is maintenance along the way, whether it's in business, whether it's in personal habits, in the way, whether it be spiritual, physical, or whatever the case may be. That is a great lesson for all of us along the way. So fascinating answer. I love the idea of pre-rejuvenation. The being proactive and taking care of things before they're damaged gives a far better chance for, healthy tissue later on in life. And I think that's a great, great lesson. So let's go to the patients right now. And when I think about the patients, what are you seeing most about them in terms of their perhaps apprehension of visiting facilities in 2020? You alluded to the fact that they're home. I thought it was very fascinating about the mask up, and you get that visual as well as obviously the Zoom appearance as well. That was incredible analogy, but now we have to have people go into environments to get the treatment, and they've saved the money to be able to do that. Talk to me about patients that you have that have a little bit of apprehension and how you're handling that.
Thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. I was lucky that I was opening a new office during the pandemic. And that's another thing. People might have thought I was crazy. But it allowed me to take all the public health information and build that into how I built the office. So, for example, I have cut down dramatically on, there are no chairs in my office except for the treatment chairs. There's no chair in the reception area. I have gone full tilt to air purification. In most high-rise buildings, only 30% of the air is new that comes through the HVAC system. 70% is recycled. I really don't want that 70% in my office. So instead of completely rejigging the HVAC system, I simply bought a whole ton of air purifiers that suck everything out of the air from coronavirus up to pollen and kill it. And so we leave these little air purifiers on 24/7. So every room has an air purifier, and the air is changed in that room every 15 minutes, sort of like an operating room. So that's really big because we've learned from the public health experts that it's actually the droplet spread that is most dangerous of
Right.
the coronavirus.
Right.
Everybody comes in to the office. We give them hand sanitizer the moment they walk in. We take their temperature. They're wearing a mask. We take them straight in and take their photographs, and they go into one of the treatment rooms. So we do linear booking. So there's not a cast of thousands ever in the office. There's my son Graham, who's my office manager, and myself, and the patients as they come in. So we do everything ourselves in the office, whether it's neuromodulators, fillers, lasers, and so everything gets done for the patient without them waiting. So they come in, they have their hour of treatment, and then they leave, and they haven't had to interact with anybody else. So we tried to make it as safe as possible, and we're grateful to all the public health people for all their guidance.
Well, Dr. Carruthers, think about what you just shared with us. You did not hunker down. You're opening a new office in the middle of a pandemic. That is why you're the pioneer of what you do and who you are. That's terrific. One of the questions that kind of tied to that is, so let's talk about clinical research.
Mm-hmm.
How has the pandemic impacted clinical research moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's a big question, because obviously with clinical research, you really need to have patient visits so that you can see the effects of, for example, the neuromodulator or the filler or the energy-based device. So I've been working with a company called Appeal, and what we're doing is we're teaching a machine how to read the face. There are 8 of us teaching this machine, and what we do is we get people to take their cell phone and take photographs in our app, and then we all grade we grade the photographs, but the machine is now going to be able to, pretty much it's getting good at the glabella now, and then we're going to move on to other lines in the face. So that's one way that using artificial intelligence and machine learning, that we'll be able to get people, because everyone's got a cell phone, or just about everyone, you can actually do remote research just like working from home. I don't think it'll be as good initially as having a trained clinical research associate actually taking the photographs, because some people take photographs and really with a palm tree coming out of here, and you know,
Yeah.
but with education and some learning and time, I think that will be very, very helpful. In the meantime, before we have that, what we're doing is still doing research, but we're doing the same linear booking with the research patients as we're doing with the clinic patients, because they all have to be treated with the same high level of safety.
Wow. You think about it, where we've come so far. We have people doing measurements with apps, getting bespoke suits made and pants and shirts, and now we're doing clinical research. Incredible, absolutely. All right, before we get out of here, I do want to jump to the office of the future, if you will, a bit. So obviously, many of the medical offices, temporarily closed during the pandemic, of course. In the meantime, you just alluded to the fact you opened an entire new practice. Any obstacles, or what were the obstacles that were presented to you trying to open an office during this pandemic where things were shut down?
The main thing, it was, first of all, it was easy to get the workers to do the renovation because everything was shut down and there was no work. So I was able to offer them work. And it's a contractor that I've known for a long time, and he's a very bright man. And so they did social distancing and wore masks while they were doing the renovation. But I was lucky. They looked at my office and they said, it'll take us 3 weeks. And of course, it took them 6, which is amazing for an office renovation to take just 6 weeks, because normally they're running from one job to another job to another job. And so your own office renovation will take longer. So that was not a challenge. What was a challenge was making sure that people would come and do the inspections that they had to do to allow me to open. And the other challenge was getting all the products and instruments and lasers. I'll give you one example. I bought just an amazing camera system from Canfield Scientific in New Jersey. And it arrived in 5 giant boxes. So on a Thursday. So I phoned them up on the Friday morning and I said, it's here, it's great, thank you. When are you sending the tech? They said, no tech. This is a pandemic and nobody can travel. And anyway, you've closed your Canadian border. So here I've got a rocket ship of a camera system that is just not going to be able to be set up. My son Graham, who is my office manager, is very good at, he overheard this conversation, and he said to me, hey mom, I'm good at doing things from IKEA, I could do it. So what they did, we set up a Zoom call with Canfield Scientific in New Jersey, and Graham put this whole thing together with the tech from Canfield telling him what to do, each step of the way. So we have a perfectly functioning camera system, but because Graham is very handy and techie, and Canfield were sort of alarmed that they couldn't get somebody out to me, it really worked. It was really great.
It's the same thing, building IKEA furniture and putting together high expensive pieces of technology and cameras, almost like landing a plane, do a FaceTime on trying to land a plane. Of course, the supply chain across many industries impacted so many companies, and attribute to you to fight through it and get your office open. That's what makes entrepreneurship and leaders so great. There are those who just continue to push forward, and that is outstanding. Before we get out of here, something's very interesting from my perspective that I'd like to ask you, because there's some crossover. We're now seeing the convergence between consumer tech and med tech, and so now you're talking about patient monitoring and vision, et cetera. And so the wearables, talk to me about that industry a little bit and how technology is impacting and how the convergence between the medical world where you live and consumer world where your patients now reside, obviously, and how that's all coming together before we jump.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I think that people have really related positively to self-monitoring. I think it's been so amazing that your heart rate, as well as if you were having a cardiac emergency. I mean, it's a really important thing. So I think that it's here to stay, not just the time, but it tells you all about yourself, and it is your coach. It keeps you honest on all your exercise that you're doing, or the calories you're taking in, or the program that you're following. I think people want it for their skin as well. So that's why I'm happy to see that what's going on with the Appiel company that I'm working with. But I think that there's more that we could do. I'm working on a machine right at the moment which measures the elasticity of human skin. I have 5 engineers working with me at the present time. We've had this machine in various iterations over the last 2 years. And now we're actually fine-tuning it. We've got a group at our university, engineering physics, which is sort of like MIT of the West. So these are 5 young geniuses, and I'm really looking forward to the next iteration of this machine, and then getting it miniaturized to put in an Apple Watch.
Well, what you have done, starting back in the 80s, and what you continue to do today, and you're not sitting still, and you're continuing to bring benefits now through technology and products, as well as adapting to the trends, not only trends from a technological perspective, but also demographically and how people and the behaviors of consumers. So it's been my pleasure to have you on the show, Dr. Carruthers. Thank you so much. Really appreciate having you. And this is Bert Miller, Beyond the Bottom Line.
Thank you so much for having me, Bert. It was a great conversation. Be well, be safe.
Thank you.